Hey, Lori, thanks for putting that in the chat. And Libby, if you see other folks coming in the waiting room, feel free to admit them as we get started. We'll give everyone just another 30 seconds or so, and then we will get started with our small but mighty group. Thanks everyone for making some time this evening. We appreciate it. And as you're joining, just feel free to say a hello, name, organization, so everyone gets a sense of who is with us today. And I should probably introduce myself. I'm Samantha Dyna. I'm the Director of Special Projects here at the Department of Labor. It's good to see you all tonight. So what do you think, Blaine? Do you think we should go ahead and get started?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to say a quick welcome if I could. Hello, everyone. There's a few new faces on here that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, so I'll give my little spiel that I did this morning. But my name's Blaine Flanders. I'm the Senior Manager for Program Performance at the Central Western Maine Workforce Development Board. First, I'd like to thank MDOL and SWB for having our workforce board here today in our second listening session. This is fantastic. I'm really excited to hear about the results in the coming weeks. And I'd also like to shout out every one of our partners and individuals who we sent invitations to that are at this listening session. I see someone from the city of Lewiston, Heather Terrell. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And everyone else that's here, we really appreciate your input as well. This is really a great opportunity that they've put together to make comments and specifically for this region tonight. So thank you all for being here, and I'll pass it back over to Sam. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides, and hopefully most folks are in a place where you can see them, and just provide a little bit of background. This is a listening session, so the goal is not for you to listen to me. I'll spend the first 10 or 15 minutes just providing some framing of what we'll talk about and some kind of overarching priorities and strategies in terms of workforce. And then we really want to turn it over to you all and hear what's on your minds. What are the ideas? What are the good things that you're seeing on the ground that you want to raise awareness of? What are the questions that you have as we are looking into this economic recovery period? We have some funding to do so. So what should we be keeping in mind as we're doing some planning and implementing of some new good work? So as we move through, and I see you all are putting your intros in the chat. Thank you for doing that. Please feel free to keep using the chat. This is a pretty small group, so just unmute too if you ever want to jump in and add any comments or context or questions. It's a relatively manageable size, which is different from some of our others where coming off mute might seem a little intimidating with 100 people on the line, but encourage you to do so to add anything that is jumping out to you. So a couple of goals for our time together. We really want to talk with you all around how to approach workforce development collaboratively, innovatively, differently, scale things that are working as we are approaching this period, hopefully post-pandemic, that we can hopefully say that safely soon, and entering into this period of economic recovery. We really want to capture your feedback, ideas, and questions. So I'll spend a little bit of time up front on some framing, and then hopefully we'll quickly get to discussion. So just in terms of background, you all know this as you are all workforce partners, but we are at this period where the economy is continuing to recover and the workforce landscape is continuing to evolve. So we are learning a lot around what folks have prioritized in the last 18 very difficult months. Workers are coming back with different demands, different preferences. Employers are trying to meet those demands and work differently. Workers are looking for more flexibility, more remote, just different types of benefits, different types of opportunities, different types of jobs. People really prioritizing things differently as they're coming back from the pandemic. And barriers that were there before have been exacerbated as well by the pandemic. So we're really at an interesting time as we're all learning together, how is workforce going to come out of this period, and how are things going to look different? How will things look the same? So a couple of just kind of framing notes. So about 20 years ago, Maine hit kind of its peak labor force participation rate. So that was around 20 years ago. And since then, it's been slightly declining as our workforce is aging. And there have consistently been pockets of workers that are sidelined and traditionally and historically marginalized and not fully engaged in the workforce. And so one thing that we want to talk about with you all today is where are there opportunities to think differently about engaging those workers that might historically have been on the sidelines, and that we really want to be fully participating in the workforce today, especially as we're looking at this tight labor market. So some counties have historically struggled with lower employment and lower rates of economic activity. So how can we think differently about engaging workers in those areas? Individuals with lower educational attainment, more likely to not be engaged in the workforce. And when they are filing for unemployment, we're seeing that they're on unemployment longer than individuals with higher levels of educational attainment. Individuals with disabilities are more likely to be disconnected from work as well. BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities have disproportionately high rates of unemployment. And women are disproportionately represented among the current claimant population of unemployment insurance, some due to caretaking needs. So this graph just breaks down who's kind of currently in the labor force and who might be traditionally excluded, and how can we think differently about engaging those folks as we're thinking about reworking the workforce system. So a couple of other data points that we just wanted to share to provide some background for our conversation is around barriers to work. So this survey results came out a couple of weeks ago. We at the Maine Department of Labor asked current unemployment claimants and active job seekers on Maine Job Link, what are the barriers in returning to work? So what's preventing them in returning to work? What do they need to return to work? And a couple of kind of major findings for us. One would be that it's not one barrier. It's not one big barrier that if we address this, everyone will go back to work. There's no silver bullet approach. There are a lot of barriers that individuals are facing, and it's really individualized, it's really complex, and it's nuanced. It's a combination of a lot of different factors that range from really job-specific things, COVID-related things, and social support and infrastructure pieces as well. So what we did see was some consistent themes. So individuals consistently looking for relevant, accessible training and job opportunities. That might be more accessible in terms of in my local area, or more accessible in terms of I need broadband access and more remote opportunities. We're also learning that COVID is still very real, and that's a #2 barrier for individuals. And that was the #1 barrier for individuals that were over the age of 55. The quality of jobs and the kind of aspects of the jobs, really important as well. So individuals citing that there's insufficient pay or wages to cover expenses with current jobs, or there's lack of benefits, lack of predictability, lack of flexibility. So really thinking about what quality, and if that's in quotation marks, as it means different things to different folks, what does quality mean to the workers you're trying to attract? And what might you shift in that job quality offering? And lastly, social supports and infrastructure. This is childcare, this is affordable housing, this is transportation, this is broadband. These are not new challenges in Maine, and they have been exacerbated by the pandemic. So all really important barriers that are part of this workforce conversation that workers or individuals who are seeking work are really trying to overcome. And these, as I said, these are systemic barriers. So we at the Maine Department of Labor are one piece of this small pie. You all are definitely key partners in this, our service providers, our employers, our education and training providers, our local boards, our local area service providers. We've got lots of partners in this. So we are just one small piece of this larger workforce strategy. So we want to be talking with you all today about how do we work more collaboratively to address these really complex barriers. So just a couple of pieces around how we're kind of thinking about the workforce strategy at the Maine Department of Labor, but we are just one piece of that strategy. A couple of pieces that we want to talk about today. So one is the principles that are underlying our strategy. So everything that we're trying to do in this economic recovery is really embedding these 5 principles. So one is collaboration and coordination. I just showed you that very complex wheel. We want to be collaborating with all of you in order to make an aligned, easy to navigate workforce system. We definitely hear from workers and employers and our partners. There's so much going on in this workforce system. I don't even know where to start or how to connect to pieces. So definitely something that we want to be doing with all of you in the next couple of months. Number 2 is making sure that we're equitable. So I just talked about some of those communities that are historically marginalized on the sidelines of workforce opportunities. How do we put them front and center as we are planning new workforce efforts? So how do we make sure that we're connecting with those individuals, supporting them, and helping them to advance in inclusive, safe, and fair workplaces? Number 3 is being outcomes driven. So everything that we're doing with our partners, everything that we're investing in, we really want to make sure is moving the needle on some of those big metrics that we're all trying to shift around employment and wages and individuals attaining credentials. 4 is just being innovative. So we want to hear from you all, what's working well, what are our new ideas that you have, what are you learning from other states or other countries about things that we want to do differently and creatively that we can really scale in this economic recovery. And lastly is we want to be sustainable. So this grant funding is about 2 or 3 years. So we had all of these great ideas that we learned from everyone. I think there was about 1,300 people that helped inform the main jobs and recovery plan. So lots of great ideas. Now we've got some funding to put behind some of these great ideas. We don't want this change to just be time limited. We want this to last beyond the period of the grant funding and really invest in sustainable change. So in the spirit of being outcomes driven, these are the 3 outcomes that we are really trying to shift with the overarching workforce strategy. These might seem familiar to you. They are pulled from the 10-year Maine Economic Development Plan and that Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan that I just mentioned. So increasing the size of Maine's talent pool by 75,000 workers is one big goal. Number 2 is increasing the percent of individuals with a credential of value. And number 3 is increasing the average annual wages of individual workers. So how do we plan to do that? For number 1, in terms of increasing the size of Maine's talent pool, we want to be breaking down barriers for workers with a focus on priority communities. So really, how do we break down the barriers for workers that are already in Maine and connect them to work? By investing in infrastructure to promote stability, by providing navigation supports to address basic needs and career exploration needs, and direct financial assistance to promote stability. And how do we attract new workers? So those are making sure that we're raising awareness of opportunities for individuals outside of Maine or outside of the country and really incentivizing them to come here and stay here and work here and supporting sector-based collaborative recruitment efforts as well. Increasing the credential of value, and that is in quotation marks as that is still being defined. That could range from a 2 or 4-year degree, also a high quality training program like an apprenticeship. So we want to be connecting individuals to high quality trainings, connecting them with degrees, by offering training and education that's aligned with the labor market needs, making sure that employers are engaged in understanding what are the training needs that they have today, what are they going to have in the future, and aligning training needs to that. Exploring or offering career exploration and guidance at an early age to provide exposure to lots of different opportunities that there are in Maine, and providing direct financial assistance to learners to ensure that they persist and attain those degrees and credentials. And lastly, we want to increase the average annual wage by 10%. And so how we plan to do that is by working with individuals and make sure that they have a clear pathway to high quality jobs. So that's building clear career pathways for high growth sectors, exposing residents to those high growth and demand career opportunities, and expanding accessibility to pathway programs. We want to work with our business partners as well to ensure that they're able to offer high quality jobs by supporting them in investing in employee training, in employee benefits and wages, and creating an inclusive and diverse workplace. I mentioned the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. This is really the outline for how a lot of the ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding, was allocated, and that's publicly available. So feel free to read through that. But just a couple of notes here that there's a lot of pieces that I just talked about on our workforce strategy in this middle section. And we're working closely with our partners to address some of those systemic barriers that came up in the survey. So affordable housing, childcare, transportation, broadband, also big priorities of this plan, and some funding going that way too. So how do we want to advance these goals with this funding? We're looking at it through 6 kind of major themes that we will engage you all on today. So one is through apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. Number 2 is through industry partnerships, so really providing supports for sector-based and employer-based collaboratives to identify what their training needs are and invest in filling those training needs. 3 is expanding existing job seeker navigation tools and offering new tools to provide direct support to individuals looking to connect to work. 4 is training and education support, so that's for individuals that are looking to upskill in their current jobs or looking to switch jobs. 5 is employer supports and creating an inclusive workplace, so making sure employers have the tools and resources to welcome new employees and keep them. And 6 is healthcare workforce strategies. So lots of different strategies around healthcare jobs, career pathways. We learned in the last session, I think Blaine, someone in your session said it's not vertical healthcare pathways. It's really challenging to navigate. So creating some navigators to help navigate that relatively complex landscape, as well as investing in upskilling. So individuals that are already connected to healthcare jobs, how do we connect them to advanced degrees to keep moving up in their healthcare career? So I just touched on most of these, but this is kind of what lives under some of those themes. And we're going to be doing some breakouts potentially. We've got a relatively small group, so we might stay as one group. We can talk a little bit more about each of these shortly. So where we are at just in terms of timing. So last couple of months ago in the summer, the proposals for how this funding would be used was approved in legislation. It really is advancing those main jobs and recovery priorities. So what we're doing now is we're hosting listening sessions like this. So we've hosted 6 or 7 of these with statewide partners as well as our local area board partners. And we're gathering input from everyone in these sessions to understand what should we be thinking about as we're designing these programs, as we're looking to implement some of this? What are the questions that we should be answering or asking ourselves as we are doing this? So really just looking to build on the good work and the knowledge that you all are bringing to this conversation. And then I would say late fall, early winter is when these initiatives will start to get approved through kind of the legislative budgeting process, and then we'll be able to start communicating with you all different grant opportunities that you might be eligible for, or programs that are coming out of this. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody. And I'll open it up for any questions that jumped out to folks as I just covered some of those pieces.
I have questions, thoughts. Laurie Glidden, Maine Housing. I'm also on the Central Western Maine Workforce Development Board.
Great.
So I work in housing. I noticed that housing is mentioned in the infrastructure as mentioned in your presentation. I don't see it on the partner wheel anywhere. I noticed that it wasn't there. And that makes me wonder why. I mean, you have housing authorities around the state who administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program to many people who are underemployed or invisible. You're not seeing them. I would care to guess that many of that population are in that group of people that you just don't see. So I manage the Family Self-Sufficiency Program at Maine Housing. There are other self-sufficiency programs in the state, about 6 or 7 others. And I'm not specifically saying, but I'm not saying that, just targeting to the Family Self-Sufficiency Program because it's an employment and savings program, but even including any kind of marketing to anyone on any public housing, not just the voucher program, but public housing. Many of the housing authorities have public housing where you have a lot of tenants, a lot of people who are of lower income, and they, for a variety of reasons, they're at lower income, right? They need work, they want to work, they need to work. And there are a lot of circumstances where they're just not able to connect with that, with employment. The other thing that jumped out at me was TANF recipients. They can only receive the funds for so long and they need to find work. So, and they as a person that manages self-sufficiency program, I work closely with families who are scared to start making more money because they're going to fall off the cliff, right? So just, those are just some of the things that came to mind when I was seeing your presentation.
Thanks for jumping in with all of that, Lori. Definitely key partners that we want to make sure we have clear ties with around our career centers and connecting with public housing so that individuals are getting that one-on-one attention. It seems like a great partnership that should definitely be happening. The benefit cliff, I'm glad that you called that out, Lori. It's definitely a tool that DOL and DHHS are in the process of making. So it's kind of customizable, and there's a calculator so you can start to work directly with individuals to say this at this many hours, you'll lose this kind of benefit. So still in development, but a huge consideration as we're talking about employment for individuals.
Yeah, just if you don't mind, if I continue just a little bit more, because I want to make sure there's one point I get across.
Yeah.
It's the voucher program, because there are more people with vouchers in the state than there are public housing. And so I feel there has to be a way that housing authorities around the state are included in conversation and marketing strategies. I mean, you have a whole audience of people there that could be marketed to by the housing authorities, because they're mailing out checks, they're mailing stuff out to individuals all the time. And why couldn't that be included in those mailings? You know, but it requires bringing housing authorities to the table, right?
Yeah, I love that idea. That seems like a great partnership and outreach strategy. And we talked in our last session around how can we meet people where they are better? And that seems like a great fit. So thanks for jumping in with that, Lori. I see some hands raised. Betsy, you want to jump in?
Sure, I can do that. My internet has been unstable, so I find if I stay off camera, I'm hoping it'll remain stable. But I'm Betsy. So I'm from Somerset Public Health, Reddington, Fairview General Hospital. We have a 3-year rural communities opioid response planning, our implementation grant that we're working on. And with our planning grant, one of the pieces that we identified was our workforce. So we were one of the only grantees that were addressing workforce from 2 different avenues, really. One, looking at the traditional workforce with how do we get people to come to Somerset County that will treat folks with substance use disorder, okay, and stay in Somerset County. So that was kind of one piece that we looked at. And then the other one, in talking to many people with lived experience and in various stages of recovery, we realized that folks in early recovery have a really hard time finding meaningful employment and finding employers that are willing to hire them. And same with folks that are leaving incarceration. And there are so many barriers for folks that are in early recovery that it's difficult for them to stay in recovery. So in many employers, they don't have any policies around working with folks that are in early recovery. And looking through your presentation, I saw that there were people with mental health disorders that were included, but nowhere was there anything about folks in recovery. So a population of people that already feel stigmatized and less than, they're not even written into this as being a population that could be worked with.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, Betsy. And we're definitely, people in recovery is definitely a priority community of ours. And I know that we're doing some work with an opioid grant that's at the federal level. And so we're hiring some individuals in different communities to provide navigation services and social supports. But I'm glad that you flagged that. It is not on the slide, but thank you. Thanks for raising that. Definitely on our radar. And I think the point that you raised, Betsy, is really good around how do we support both workers and employers in creating inclusive workplaces. And it kind of brings to mind, Libby, the progressive employment model. That's a really effective model with individuals with disabilities and meeting people where they are, providing both that employer support and the worker support based on what they need at that moment. So that could be a job shadowing, that could be once or twice a week some work and kind of scaling people up. But Libby, feel free to jump in if there's other context there, since we do have some funding to scale that model to other communities. And so people in recovery, justice involved are definitely on our radar.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. The progressive employment model has been a model that's been really successful with people with disabilities for all the reasons that you just described, and also certainly people who have had significant barriers to employment and in small communities are well known, and that's also a challenge. Certainly, I think, Betsy, when you were describing people who have coming out, you know, of incarceration or recovery, oftentimes in small communities, people are really well known. And the progressive employment model, because it's a dual customer model and it's focused on really having an option for the employer that's low or no risk. We've had a lot of success around the state with people with disabilities, and we're very excited to be able to kind of scale that up and think about how it could work with other communities who face barriers.
So we've got about, oh, Tobin, your hand's still raised. Sorry about that. Go ahead, jump in.
No, it's fine. I was just going to echo what Lori was mentioning earlier. I attended an event in Portland a few weeks ago, and one of the speakers was the CEO of Hospitality Maine, and he was saying that a lot of employment in Maine is seasonal work, and it's basically been impossible for a lot of hotels and restaurants and other retail providers like that to find summer housing for their employees, to the point that some companies are like buying hotels and housing their workers there in the summer because it's so hard for them to find affordable housing. And certainly in some of our larger cities, like I live in Lewiston, and I go down to the coast quite a bit, and even up further inland, it's so hard for folks even that are working, much less unemployed or long-term unemployed, to find affordable housing. And it's certainly a workforce barrier just as much as anything else is. And I know that the MDOL did a survey about the barriers that you'd referenced earlier, and just wanted to echo what Lori said about housing being a significant challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely, Tobin. And I think that seasonal work component that you flagged too is particularly exacerbating some of the affordable housing issues if the work is seasonal. How do you need to invest in infrastructure, but trying to figure out the workforce patterns there is tough. Yep. Great. So I'm still thinking that I'm going to break us into breakouts because it's still a kind of a big group. So we're just going to go into two. So we'll have a little bit more of an intimate conversation. So Libby's going to facilitate one, and I will as well. And I'm going to just break us out. What we're going to do is I walked through a couple of those principles. So how do we work more creatively, innovatively, more collaboratively, more sustainably? And I'll just pull up the slide so we all have a sense of what are we going to be doing next. And I'll put the questions in the chat here. And we're going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes going through these as a group. So we're going to break out into two groups. We're going to do goal 1 and goal 3. So one group will talk about how do we increase the size of Maine's talent pool. One group will talk about how do we increase the average annual wage by embedding some of these principles. So working more innovatively, working more collaboratively. What must we embed in this work to achieve equitable outcomes? And how do we ensure this work is sustainable beyond this grant funding? So I'm going to put these in the chat since I know that they don't carry over into the breakout rooms. And then we're going to break out and talk about that for the next 15, 20 minutes. Okay. Hopefully everyone is getting prompted there. Oop, go ahead. And if it's not prompting, you can click that breakout room icon and it should hit that. The other group had an additional 45 seconds, so We'll just keep noodling, and Erica, you have another 45 seconds to think through the things that you're going to flag for the group.
Sam, I just wanted to say thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I know it's, even with less of your staff, and just being able to do the behind the scenes without Isaac and facilitating. It's great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we are excited to be here.
I appreciate it because it really sends a
adaptive.
good message. It sends a good message, and then, more and more the ability to make things on the third shift available. I think we can try to start to incorporate that ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, is this our full group?
I think we're back.
Excellent. Libby, you want to lead us through a report out?
Sure. Well, we were having a really rich conversation. In fact, the time snuck up on us and we had to scoot back quickly. But I think Tobin was going to report out on a couple of the things that we discussed.
Sure. So our topic was working on increasing the average annual wage by 10%. In terms of innovation and I guess equity, this kind of echoes something that we had discussed earlier today, but the importance of recognizing credentials obtained outside the US is of vital importance, because, if you had trained, in your country of origin as a nurse or an engineer or a pharmacist, but for whatever reason that credential wasn't being recognized in the US, chances are you'll be working, fast food or as an Uber driver or something like that. And so if you could somehow get that credential recognized, or at least get into some sort of advanced training to gain the credential that you need in the US, that could go a long way for improving, your average wage by 10% or more. So that was one thing we talked about. One concern that was raised in terms of sustainability is that, the calls for employers to raise their annual wage by 10%, but their revenue stays flat. And so how, what kind of incentives do the employers have to raise their wages if they, aren't receiving any more on their bottom line? And so that was a concern about sustainability that we had. And then the third thing that kind of was repeated over and over was, again, emphasizing the barriers like transportation, like childcare, like housing, and how they all, work to play a similar role in the whole system. And so, you can't have one without the other, and that they all are in the end are all connected and have to be addressed. So I guess those would be the three high points that immediately come to mind from our really fruitful and lively discussion.
Great. Thanks, Tobin, so much for reporting out. Sam, who did you have in your group to report out?
We've got Erica ready to go.
All right, Erica.
Yes, we discussed increased talent pool by breaking down barriers and attracting talent, and spent a most significant amount of time discussing childcare and what that means for the state as a whole. Is more of a macro discussion. Who would qualify for those types of subsidies? What would a subsidy like that look like? How would something like that be integrated into the workforce system? And what would that mean for employers? How could we talk to employers about that? And that kind of led to a little sub conversation about flexibility for employers. And then we also touched on, what was that last part? Oh, heritage, and how we can kind of hold true to Maine's origins while still kind of propelling a forward momentum. So just general overview. Feel free to jump in, folks.
Innovative origins.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Erica. I think you captured everything that we hit on. So where we're going next, we are going to talk about those 6 buckets of initiatives. So I'm going to try to share my screen here and just remind folks what were those Arpa initiatives. My computer just froze. Oh, here we go. We're back. Okay. So we're going to go back into breakouts, and we are going to talk through these Arpa initiatives. So we've got here 6 main buckets of what do we want to really advance with this funding. And so we're just going to do some rapid fires. So we're going to talk about the first 4 actually first. So we're going to do some combining. So apprenticeship and training and education is going to be one group, since those 2 are very interconnected. And then the other group will be industry partnerships and employer supports. So as we're thinking about these initiatives, what should we keep in mind as we're starting to plan and implement these? What are the good things that you're seeing inside Maine, outside Maine that we want to include in our thinking? What are questions that you have that need to be answered as we're planning these? Any flags or concerns? I love that that group on sustainability raised a concern. So what are those things that we need to be thinking about as we start to map these pieces out? So we are going to do this for about 10 minutes since we're covering 2 topics at once, but they're very interrelated, I think. And you will get the opportunity to choose the room that's more interesting to you. So it's either apprenticeship and training or industry partnership and employer supports. I'm going to open those. And you should be prompted on your screen to click one of those rooms. If you're not, try clicking the breakout room icon. That should prompt it. And if you need assistance, I can also just throw you in one.
It doesn't let him click anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one's of interest? Apprenticeship or employer supports?
Employer supports works.
All right, put you there. Susan. And apprenticeship or employer supports? You're on mute.
I think she said employer supports. Right.
Blaine, I'm gonna just throw you in one.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're all back, Libby.
Great. Well, we had some really interesting conversation, and for our group, Blaine was willing to report out. So thanks, Blaine, if you want to share a few of our key points.
Sure, of course. So we focused on, first apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. The top 2 things were that we should start career awareness at a younger age, whether it's middle school, high school, making sure that, kids know what their options are and that these are some of the options for them, as well as working with county jails on their work programs that they offer and the credentials that they offer. So that way inmates are ready, but when they are ready to leave, they actually are ready to go and they can go into pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship. And then for training and education supports, it's funny, at the end of our conversation, we were talking about turnover, and 2 of the things that came up were that 1, people were completely burned out because of COVID, which is absolutely reasonable. Everyone is stressed. People are on different sides about vaccines. And then the other reason was retention. And although people focus on hiring, maybe they're not focusing as much on retention. And then the other thing for training and education supports that is of high note is educating employers on the nature of addiction as a brain disease. I thought that that's really important because people can't help addiction. And I think if employers had a little bit more knowledge behind this, they wouldn't be, I think there would be less bias around it. And so I think that's really important as well.
Great. Thanks very much, Blaine. Anybody else from our group that had any other piece to add? All right, Sam, how about your group?
Mohammed.
Yes, so we talked, I know we had the industry partnership. One of the point we made was clearly identify target industries and treat experiences as they come. We understand that everybody has a different experiences that they can bring to the table. Welcoming for new people from other places, whether it's Afghanistan, Pakistan, or grew in the workforce here. So that you will have people from all walks of life, and to treat them with respect, and make sure that it is valued within the industries that we partner with. Options available for people who might not want to pursue the 4-year or 2-year college path, which means have maybe trade sets that could be used. That could be within 6-month training, 1 year, or whatever it takes. We definitely have that issue a lot within the immigrant community. People might not want to go to 4-year college, so what are the options? Giving those resources will be definitely go a long way. Make sure to culturally competent training included, which means whoever is providing the training has to be culturally competent for those folks to be successful. The other thing we talked about was the employer engagement support. Need to work with the employers to shift practices to be open, welcoming to new workers. Really, that is the work we mostly do to connecting folks from the new mainers community to employers that are needed, those folks to be really to fill positions. So having the resources, and also really being competent to make sure that the placements that we make is really successful for both parties at the same time. Diversity training by experts in the diversity field, which is very important. What does your environment look like? Are people going to be welcoming? Are people going to feel included? Are they going to sit at the table? Do they have a voice at the table? So making sure that really having that diversity training by experts is very important. We talked that diversity and inclusion. The diversity and inclusion training, how do you retain individuals from different backgrounds? We understand you'll run into folks from different cultures, different countries, different languages. Make sure that you can manage cross-cultural conflict. What does that look like in your workplace? And the last one I'll mention is reframe barriers as opportunities and strengths that diverse talent can bring to the table. We have definitely seen a successful organization that use diversity in their workplace, and when you respect different experiences, different views and perspectives at the table, everybody will be successful. So that is the points I'll make. If anybody else wants to jump in and share a few more.
Thanks so much, Mohammed. I think you covered definitely some of the main themes from that conversation. So much good energy and ideas in this late night session. So I am appreciating everyone bringing their A game before dinner. So we've got about 8 more minutes. And so I'm not going to break us out again, but I just put in the chat that board. So the only 2 we haven't talked about are job seeker navigation and healthcare workforce. So I'm just going to give everyone 1 or 2 minutes to just add anything under either of those, or if you've got another burning thought or idea that came up in this report that you want to add under any of these pieces, just give everyone 1 or 2 more minutes to add any other thoughts on here, and then I think we can close out.
I'll just go by, I think one of the job seekers, let me actually go back and see. So job seeker navigation, guidance, and support. What we've been doing is actually, what we hope to do is actually bring people, the resources to the people that need it. So we work in the community that we live in. We interact with folks every day, individual level, to have those conversations. What do you need? And we want to kind of be the middle ground that connects, be the connection networking piece to a lot of organizations that have great resources and the folks that need it the most. And I think transportation is one thing, childcare, language barrier, and sharing information, again, it's going to be really up to both parties to be involved, both the job seekers and the organization to be really this thing to be successful. And that's what we want to create an experience that how do we eliminate, or at least try to eliminate those barriers from the ground. And we hope to work. We've been attending events in the community that is happening, whether that is a job fairs or whether that is social service events that are having the community, to make sure that we're connected and talking with folks of what is the barriers that they face, or how do you kind of get over that hurdle. And I hope to kind of work continuously with a lot of you folks and see ways we can build a great workforce for the future of Maine.
Thanks, Mohammed. I love that. I think making sure that we're working with community partners that already have the trust and the bridges to the communities that we're trying to help, and really working closely, collaborating with those partners to make sure that it's not another barrier to come to another organization and reintroduce yourself. We're already working with individuals that have that trust and helping them to navigate. Awesome. I almost want to just sum up or just wrap up, because Mohammed said so many great things around like the state of our workforce and how we want to work together. And I feel like that was a great last word. So if there's anything else that people want to add, please feel free to add that to the board. But Mohammed, I think you summed up everything beautifully. So I think we can end on that note, if that sounds okay to everyone. And you've got that board, add other thoughts, ideas. Just thank you for spending time with us this evening and bringing the energy and the ideas and the inspiration. Where we're going with this, we're summing everything up. This is our seventh or eighth session. So we're looking across all these sessions and pulling together what are the themes, what cut across all of the sessions and all the communities. And we'll post that in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And so we'll make sure that we're in touch with all of you about the opportunities that are coming out with this funding, so that you all as partners have access to those opportunities in the next couple of months. So thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Well,
Sam, I
thank
really
you
wanted
for
Thank you.
inviting us here.
Yeah.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
everybody.
Sam,
Thank
you've
you,
done an excellent
everyone.
job, and I just want to really thank you. You've been, I mean, this is amazing. You're doing just a great job, and we really do thank you very much. I wanted to thank Lori, but I think she's left.
She's got to go eat dinner, but absolutely. It's great to see you all and work with you all. And thanks
Yeah.
everyone. Have a
Yes,
good
I
night.
really do. This
Bye-bye.
is great. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Good
Okay,
night.
Mohammed, why do I
Bye.
have your email already? We already know each other.
I know. I know a few folks that are in this call, so I've been in contact with a few.
Yeah, you know what? So listen, I have we already just sent you an email, okay?
Stacy, he's the one that I mentioned last week.
Yes. So
Oh,
maybe-
that's why we have the email. Okay, I was about
Yeah.
to say, wait, I'm emailing you, but I have your email. Lady, thank you so very much for stepping in and helping moderate this late night session, and we really do appreciate it.
Sure. Glad to be here tonight.
Is there any way we
Absolutely.
can, we'll raise
Thank you
this
guys
up
for
to all of
this
our board
opportunity.
members. This was excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. Have a good
Take
night.
care.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
night.